Hi everyone, this video is a review of Module 2, and in our Module 2 readings, we had chapters 9, 10, 13, 16, and 17. So a disclaimer right off the top, we talked about chapter 9 in Module 1 as well, so I'm not going to re-review that, but it is important to know the topic of value and what value is when we're talking about these Module 2 concepts as well. And same goes with chapter 16 too. So I am going to re-review that, but for chapter 9, you can find that in module 1. And then chapter 13, I've actually uploaded a video and a website to help you go through examples for chapter 13. Okay, so let's get started. So chapter 10 starts on Adam Smith and his ideas from the beginning of time, from the beginning of modern economics. So Adam Smith, we say, is the founding father of this modern economic society. So Adam Smith had this idea that market society is great for all. Free markets are able to liberate societies. They're able to bring societies together, bring people together that may not be brought together otherwise through trade, through cooperation, things like that. So 3 things about market society that Adam Smith really pushed. So 1, market society, free markets are able to free society from starvation, meaning we do not have to be totally self-reliant in producing our own food, our own homes, our own clothes, all of that. Anything we need to survive, it is no longer necessary that we provide that for ourselves. We're able to provide other goods in a free market that allow us to then exchange those goods, those intermediate goods, whether it's wages from labor, whether it's profits from selling something of your own. You can take those wages that earned value and exchange it for things like food, water. And so in that sense, free markets are able to free us from that starvation. 2, freedom from servility, meaning when years ago when we had serfdom, when we had kings, and in these kingdoms, it was all ruled by a family, some overruling power that decided who would supply what and at what cost. So a free market allows us to be able to price depending on supply and demand of a good. There's nobody saying this is how much this is worth, this is how much this good is, market value. There's no one putting that value on it. So in the sense that when we think back to times of kings and queens and royals families and servility and serfdom, like I said, kings and queens were at the top of this chain where these bottom people, these servility, these serfs, worked and slaved away in order to provide these goods for the society. So with a free market, now every single person is meaningful. Every single person has something to bring to the table and to exchange. A free market allows the liberation of every single individual within a society. It's meaningful. They provide some kind of value. They bring something to the table. And not necessarily are they slaving away dependent on whatever the kingdom rule is. So in that sense, we are now eliminating that kind of servility in society. So one thing with all of this, with this free market society, these ideas that Adam Smith had, one morning he was wary of is that there are no guarantees with free market society. So in a free market, there is a lot of room for corruption, for crony capitalism, for corrupt power and individuals to come in and to overrule this free market idea, okay? So like I said, Adam Smith, his 3rd biggest thing on these market societies are that there are no guarantees from what would come of this, okay? So some main points to take from this chapter 10 and Adam Smith's ideas on free markets and liberation and trade. What we can take from this is that free markets do allow societal liberation from serfdom, from poverty. It allows us more time on our hands. It allows other individuals to be able to produce other goods that we may not otherwise have if we were trying to still be self-sufficient as a society, as an economy. So like I said, all of what a free market enables a society to have is it allows for that specialization. It allows for specialized doctors. It allows for specialized teachers, for specialized trades that otherwise, if we were still hunting and gathering food, we may need to put all of our time into that in order to survive. But with a free market, we are able to use time and knowledge and skill in order to specialize in leading to that division of labor. So like I said, Adam Smith had all these great liberating ideas about free markets, but there are weaknesses. There are places in this free market society where people can come in and spoil all these positives that a free market really does give a society. So in that sense, it's big corporations kind of taking that power step, that power and authority, their concerns of Adam Smith. And so we do see that in today's world. We have to make sure monopolies don't acquire too much power. We make sure no single person has too much power in any kind of system or institution. So like I said, this was one big thing that Adam Smith was very wary about with the free market society. Okay, so some great ideas from him, but we do have need for concern for some aspects of this. Chapter 13 talks about the production possibilities frontier, and or chapter 13 talks about the production possibilities frontier and how to work through those exercises. There are videos and links in our eCampus for this chapter that I believe does a more efficient job of going through comparative advantage or production possibilities frontier. Okay, so now we are on comparative advantage, chapter 16. So what comparative advantage is the ability of an individual or a group to carry out some particular activity, such as producing a product, more efficiently than another activity. So to give the first example, I am strong in economics. I have a lot of knowledge in economics, whereas science, chemistry, I could not go in and teach a chemistry class. Don't get me wrong, I could prepare and go in and give slides for Chemistry 101, but I am not going to do that as efficiently as I would for an economics lecture. So my particular ability gives me more efficiency in preparing economic slides than Chemistry 101 slides, okay? So that comparative advantage is just telling us what is the most efficient use of our given time, okay? So when we think of this comparative advantage, we can link it back to that idea of opportunity cost. So when I think of where is my time most efficiently used, I think of what I'm strong in, of what skills I have and what knowledge I have to where I would use my time efficiently. So we link it back to this idea of opportunity cost, because my opportunity cost of preparing an econ lecture versus preparing a chemistry lecture is a lot different. Meaning, like I said, it's a lower opportunity cost is telling us that I have a comparative advantage in this sense, okay? If my opportunity cost relative to a chemistry student, as I said, if we were to have to create these econ slides, my comparative advantage, I have a higher comparative advantage creating the econ lectures than does a chemistry student, okay? So in studying that PPF in chapter 13, we can also link those ideas, that production possibilities frontier, back to this comparative advantage. So one cool thing from these PPFs that we're able to see is the slopes are going to tell us that what we have a comparative advantage in. So let's go to an example of that. So in looking at this graph right here, so in looking at this graph here, we're looking at two countries, country A, country B. We want to compare these PPFs of these two countries in order to find who has that comparative advantage. So when we look at country B is able to produce 21 trucks with 0 cars. Country A is able to produce 6 trucks at 0 cars. So then we move over to looking at these cars. Country A is able to produce 30 cars, whereas country B is able to produce, if they are to put all their money, resources, time into just cars, country B will be able to produce 35 cars, okay? So we look at country B and we see that country B is 3.5 times better at producing trucks. So when we put all of our time and resources into trucks, country A is going to be 3.5 times less in the advantage in making trucks. When we look at cars, country B is only 1.17 times more efficient at producing cars than country A. Okay, so in this sense, country B, we see, has the absolute advantage in trucks and in cars. If we were to put all of our resources into either or, country B is able to produce more at any given time, okay? So even though country B is better at producing trucks and cars, we know if we devote all of our country B's resources to producing trucks, we're able to produce 3.5 times more than country A would be able to produce at all. So in this case, when we start to specialize in labor, we are able to specialize in trade. So when we allow that cooperation between two different entities, so in this case, it's country A, country B, when we can devote that time and effort into more efficiently producing both cars and trucks. So in this case, because country B is so much better at producing trucks, we would leave producing trucks up to them. And then for cars, we would leave country A up to producing cars, where they would be able to produce 30 cars. So in this case, now if we devote all of country A's resources to cars, they are able to have 30 cars. And if country B is able to produce just trucks, we're gonna have 21 trucks. And then the trade between them is going to leave them at a point higher off than country A would be here. So we know within this PPF, country A, all of these are possible. They can create any combination of these trucks and cars on their own. But with that specialization where they're producing only cars and trading cars for trucks, we're going to end up somewhere out here outside that PPF, because with trade, we're gaining from that trade. We are gaining more than we could have before that trade, or else we wouldn't have taken place in this trade. So country B, they're going to end up with 21 trucks, and with those trucks, each truck is going to be worth this many cars to country A. So if country B is able to trade a few of their trucks for a few of country A's cars, we're all, each country A and country B, are both going to be outside of their original PPFs, meaning we're satisfied, we are happier than we would have been with just being self-sufficient, with just keeping to ourselves without that trade. So while we're on this page, let's just talk a few of the characteristics of a PPF. Like I said, chapter 13, you'll be able to find a few exercises, but let's just talk about the shape in this graph, just in general. So when we see a PPF, we know it is always going to be downward sloping. So that negative slope is going to start devoting our resources and time to this other good. We're going to decrease in quantity to quantity supplied of good Y. So if we have two goods, and we want to increase production of good one, we know that holding all of our given inputs constant, if we want to increase production for good one, we know we have to decrease production for good two, okay? So that is that negative downward slope. So PPF is always going to have that negative downward slope. So in this case, we see that this PPF is actually concave, meaning it is not just a simple straight line. If we wanted a straight line, we would see this. If we would see something more like that. That is linear. That is our straight linear line. But in this case, our PPF is concave, meaning it has a little bit of, we can see a little bit of curve in it, okay? So, let's clear all that. So in this case, why is this PPF concave? So the slope of this particular PPF shows milk on our y-axis and cars on our x-axis. So this is a country that produces milk and cars, just to bring it down to simplify it a little. So the steeper the slope, the larger that sacrifice needs to be, the larger our opportunity cost. So this is where that term opportunity cost starts to tie back into that PPF. Our PPF tells us that slope is going to tell us as the steeper the slope, the larger our opportunity cost. So if we have a super high opportunity cost for my 1 hour of creating econ slides, my opportunity cost is a lot higher than it was when I was 11 years old and I didn't have as much knowledge and as much schooling and education. My opportunity cost now of using an hour of my time is a lot less than it was before. So my PPF is a lot steeper than it had been years in the previous. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. If not, like I said, chapter 13, there are a few exercises for us. So moving on from PPF and that comparative advantage, we're gonna go back and talk about absolute advantage. So absolute advantage is, once again, plays into that idea of comparative advantage. But now in this case, when we talk about an absolute advantage, we talk about, like in that case of country A and country B. Country B is able to produce at any given time more cars and more trucks. In that case, we have an absolute advantage. Country B has an absolute advantage. So with that comparative advantage, we start to realize why the division of labor exists. When we divide up the labor, our opportunity cost of producing that extra good is lessened. So this starts to lead to that division of labor, as I said. It leaves time for things that we may not have had time for before, but are just as important, if not more important, in order to specialize. So let's go over this question. You have a comparative advantage in producing a good if, and now let's go through A, you can produce more of that good than your trading partners. B, you can produce that good at a lower opportunity cost than your trading partners. C, someone is willing to pay you for producing that good. Or D, you prefer not to consume the good yourself. So like I said, the big idea of this comparative advantage is who has the higher opportunity cost of producing this given good. So the absolute advantage is going to be that choice A, that you can produce more of that good than your trading partners at any given time. That's absolute advantage, not comparative advantage. So let's go to B again. You can produce that good at a lower opportunity cost than your trading partners. Ding, 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 ding. This should be raising bells, alarms, whistles. When we talk about that opportunity cost, once again, that is what our comparative advantage is in. Who has more of an opportunity cost to produce this good? If country A is easily able to produce olives and country B is easily able to produce oils, we wouldn't have the countries switching what they're producing. We wouldn't have country A producing those grapes or the wine and country B producing the oils, we would want them to specialize in what they're most efficient at. So that term efficiency really, really plays to opportunity cost. Efficiency, opportunity cost leads to that comparative advantage, okay? Okay, so like I said, B is the answer for our question here. So as a result of this comparative advantage, of free market society, of trade and cooperation becoming more and more existent in our society, division of labor now occurs, and on a very large scale. If we, like I said, we talked about country A and country B a lot. That is in the most simplified case. So when we think of comparative advantages, we can now extend this idea to the entire global community. So when we think of division of labor, this is on a large scale now. Countries are able to specialize in certain goods, and they're able to make these trades now. We're able to start developing and spending more time and resources into researching new ideas and providing new goods and services for people. So that's another advantage of that free market and where that division of labor comes into play. Because we're going to have lower opportunity costs now, once our labor is divided, we can use that time to, one, efficiently produce whatever good it may be we have that comparative advantage in, but also two, we might have more time and resources now to commit to other projects, other goods and services that may not even exist yet. So that is one great thing about free market society. Every single person in the globe becomes a trading partner in a sense. We are not working to keep ourselves alive. I am not building my own house. I am not fetching my own harvest in order to keep myself sustained. Other people are able to do that at a much lower opportunity cost than me. So that's their comparative advantage. My time is now spent teaching, spent in school. I don't have to worry about sustaining myself and keeping myself alive because of this comparative advantage, because of this division of labor. I'm able to focus my efforts on something that I think is more meaningful. Okay, so I hope this helps sum up the idea and explains how all of these free market ideas kind of lead to this division of labor, lead to this efficiency, this advantage. And really, it's a very liberating thing for these markets to be able to have the power to come in and make these huge adjustments in society. We're able to cooperate with one another. We're able to bring people together from all around the globe that otherwise would not have met. So this is everything kind of leading up to that division of labor. And now we're here. We're at that division of labor. And that idea is a really, really essential part of our modern economic system today. Okay. So in talking about this division of labor, we can talk about this big switch from this idea in the 1700s, the 1600s, of protecting domestic goods. We used to, as countries used to want to protect their own goods from other foreign countries. We now know that international trade is one of the key factors in creating a large economic society. We know that international trade enables us more time, more freedom, and the ability to create new things, to research, to learn new things as a society. It frees up our time. So in this sense, from kind of thinking anything a country produces, it stays in that country, to now this idea of we have international trade all around the world. The idea of tariffs began years back when in the 1700s, we wanted to protect those goods, our domestic goods, from foreign entities. So we put tariffs on these goods. Part of those tariffs surely are from transaction costs, which we kind of brushed over here in the first two modules, but we'll talk about a little more later. These tariffs are actually a barrier to trade. So when we have these high tariffs, countries aren't going to want to be willing to trade with one another. So we understand that this international trade is a great thing. From Adam Smith, the exchanging of goods, services, ideas, the flow of all of this globally is a great thing. Whereas if countries just want to be self-sustain and they want to keep to themselves, they're not going to have as prosperous a society as a community would if they were willing to trade, open to foreign exchange, foreign cooperation. All right. So now this big idea of specialization comes into play, where we have the ability to cooperate and trade with other people that are able to produce goods and services that we may need at a lower opportunity cost. So with that, we're able to now specialize in things that we think we're best at. So once again, I'm going to use the example because I think a lot about how a lot of these ideas play a huge role in my life. So I think about from a young age, I was good at math. I was good at things like that. And then I started learning in high school that economics is a really cool thing. So instead of having to go out and learn a trade in order to keep my society sustained, in order to keep living, I don't have to go out and become a metal smelter. I don't have to go out and become a farmer. I am able to use my knowledge, my skills, and what I think I'm best at, and I'm able to work on that rather than, like I said, having to provide everything for myself in order to live. This is what that division of labor, that specialization, this is the big idea here. So from specialization comes innovation. We can take what we are best at and we are able to produce that at a much lower cost than anybody else, okay? And from this, this is where innovation occurs. People start to specialize at what they're good at, and they start to realize things that maybe have not been realized yet. So really we think of everybody as professionals. If you're a professional in your given skill, you have a lower opportunity cost in whatever you think your given skill is than someone else that may think their skill is math, science, farming, whatever it may be. Like I said, that division of labor allows us to be able to specialize in whatever we would like. It's a beautiful thing. So now instead of having to worry day to day about what our society is looking like, we're able to enrich the lives of people globally. We are able to provide goods and services that otherwise may not have reached these people, may not have gotten to these people. With that trade comes, like I said, innovation and the spread of ideas. So this is where specialization is definitely a key to our modern economic society.